welcome to Project Freelance. How's it going, guys? My name is Kay Anagonio. If you are new to this podcast, welcome to the show. If you are a veteran listener, thank you for coming back for another week. These episodes come out every Monday morning at 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, and we're about to launch season 7 of the podcast. Super excited. If you or anyone you know wants to come on this podcast as a freelancing guest, I would love to chat with you. I am currently trying to get Joey Sturgis, Andrew Wade, a bunch of really amazing producers on this podcast, so we might just have a full season of producers. I think that would be kind of fun. So if you guys want any of them to come on the podcast, tweet them and tell them to come on to Kay Anagonio's podcast called Project Freelance. You can tag Project Freelance or Kay Anagonio. All of my social media links are down in the description for you guys, but I would love to have some more producers on this podcast, people that run labels. I would like to, get all kinds of different people on here. This week on Project Freelance, I'm speaking with Daniel Escobar, an audio engineer and production assistant. He's worked with people like Timbaland. He's worked with Pharrell. He's worked with Justin Bieber. He's worked with all kinds of different people, and we'll touch on that in this episode. But we actually met on Warped Tour in 2014, and we've been friends on Facebook for a while. I made a post asking for freelancers to comment what they do as freelancers, and he left a comment, and I was like, hey man, you should come on this podcast for sure and share some of your stories and your insight with the audience. So this week we have Daniel Escobar, and I'm super excited for this episode. It is a great one. We talk a lot about how he came up as started off from zero, from scratch, went to Full Sail University, started interning, and then finally got his placement at his current studio in Florida. So before we get started, I need to let you guys know a few things. First of all, thank you for listening to Project Freelance. If you like this episode at any point in time, please leave a rating and feedback. It helps the podcast grow. It helps new people find us. You probably read some of the feedback before you started listening to the podcast. So if you guys have like 30 seconds of your time, please leave a rating and feedback so that we can get more sponsorships and things so that we can keep growing this podcast. So speaking of partners and sponsors, I have to thank our partner, Liquid Death Water. If you've never heard of Liquid Death, well, don't worry. There's an ad coming for you in 3, 2, 1. From the streams of the Austrian Alps comes a new kind of water. A water that is sure to raise you from your grave. If you're tired of buying cases of plastic water bottles that contain carcinogens and God knows what else, or if you're trying to lower your waste footprint, Liquid Death comes in beautifully rugged aluminum cans. Murder your thirst with a can of Liquid Death. Check the link in the description and use code JustTheLetterK at checkout for 10% off your order. Liquid Death. Murder your thirst. So yes, please use code JustTheLetterK at checkout for a discount on your water. The other thing I need to let you guys know about is that I have a Patreon. If you would like to support what I'm doing on Patreon, you will get early access to all of my content, including, but not limited to, my podcast, my vlogs, my covers, my original music, and pretty much anything I work on. You also get discounts on merch, you get discounts on photo prints, and you get discounts on my book. So yeah, if you guys want to join Patreon, that would be sick. Patreon.com/JustTheLetterK. Or you can just check out the links in the description and you can do it that way. It's super easy. All right, so without further ado, Daniel, can you please introduce yourself and what it is you do to the Project Freelance audience?
My name is Daniel Escobar. I'm a freelance audio engineer, producer, mixing engineer, whatever you want to call it. So, yeah.
Sweet. So how did you get into music in the first place? Like before the studio stuff, before all the production stuff, what got you started and inspired by music?
I was actually an artist. I was in a band, just trying to do the whole thing locally and try to record music because it was just so expensive to get studio time. So I started getting my own gear and, slowly but surely that took over. My band broke up and next thing you know, I just decided to take audio full time and I've been doing it ever since.
So how many years are you in now?
I've been doing audio for about 10 years. Professionally, I would say for about 6 years.
Okay, cool. So when you first started with the production stuff, how did you learn how to do this? Like, where did you go to find, the plugins and, the way you EQ something, like how did you learn to produce audio?
It's been a very long journey. I'm still learning to this day, which is another reason why I love this career. But I started at a home studio like most people who start. YouTube University was a huge thing for me at first, and um, I ended up going to Florida. I went to Full Sail University, um, and I just did a lot of networking over there and all that stuff. And over time, I found a studio. I interned. I interned my way up to an assistant engineer there. Um, and next thing you know, I started meeting people left and right, and I started working at different studios, and it just kind of took over. It was like a domino effect, realistically. Um, I just I worked as hard to get in the door certain places, and over time, I just started getting calls, and it hasn't stopped since then.
Hell yeah. So take me back to when you started going to Full Sail. What made you go from, YouTube University to committing to do like a trade school like Full Sail? Like what made you want to go that route?
Okay, that's a great question. It was actually a lot of things. First of all, when I was in Texas at the time, that's where I used to live. I was recording a lot of like, local bands, and I felt like there was not a lot of clientele that I wanted to expand on in my area. And I saw Florida as a great option. Um, and Full Sail just happened to be there. So I was like, this is sick. And so I ended up going there to do a tour of the school. And when I saw the studios they had, I immediately fell in love, and I just knew I had to go there, and I went. And I think it was a great experience for me. I know a lot of people hate on schools like Full Sail, and a lot of people love it. I had personally a great experience. So
Yeah, I think that, going to a trade school, I did the same thing for film. So I went to SAE Institute. I was studying abroad at the time. But I think that going to something like Full Sail can be great for people. It just depends on what you put into it, really.
absolutely,
Like, I feel like a lot of people talk shit about, things like Full Sail because they're not willing to commit and put their all into it. They're just like, oh, I thought that it was going to be this or that. But it's really like what you put into your schooling.
absolutely. And I have friends who went to SAE that are killing it. I was definitely that student that went to school during the day, and as soon as I left the school, I went to a studio. Like, I was working at the studios every single day, and I think that's the reason why I was able to actually break into the industry. There's a lot of people in this certain schools who just go to school and worry about their grades, and then when the time they graduate and they don't have a job, then they're blaming the school. It is up to you. So I do feel that.
100%. 100%. So tell me about what it was like to be grinding like that, like going to school full time and then going out and finding these gigs, finding these studios, finding local bands, whoever it is that you were working with. What was that grind like initially? Because I'm sure you've probably, slowed down now to the point where you can pick and choose your clients. But can you talk about the grind at the beginning where you're just like, go, 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 go?
Right. So it's actually it's weird because I just I just wanted to get my feet wet in whatever I could at the time. So there was a producer. His name was Andrew Wade. I don't know if you know who that is, but he's done like bands like A Day to Remember and stuff like that. And I found out just doing research that his studio was literally down the road from Full Sail. So I remember literally hitting him up on Facebook like, yo, I just moved to Orlando. I'm a Full Sail, and I don't know if this is gonna come out weird or whatever, but I would love to intern for you or work for you. Even if you need help with anything, like, I'll show up. And he actually responded, and he was like, honestly, we're actually doing construction in the studio. If you really want to do this, show up tomorrow at 8 a.m. And I did, and we ended up building the place, and got to meet him, got to meet the guys from Our Day to Remember, this and that. Not long after that, I found another studio that they were doing a lot of rap, and I went over there, and then I started doing rap. So I just kind of put myself in situations where something could take off, but I just wasn't staying stagnant. That was kind of my main process. And then I did that enough to the point where I did get a good amount of clientele. Um, and then a breaking point for me, I met this producer. His name was Rodney Jerkins. Um, he goes under Dark Child, and he was one of Michael Jackson's producers. He uh, he took me on as an engineer on one of his projects for this artist named Jack Ross, which is on Island Records now. And we did a bunch of songs. He thought I was awesome, and we just had a good relationship. Through that, I got a contact for this studio in Miami called Criteria, which was known as the Hit Factory, where I am actually working now. And here I am like an assistant engineer, and I also freelance out of here with my own clients. So that's kind of been the move for me after all that process.
So what was it like working with, Grammy winners, and, Andrew Wade, of course, people that know A Date to Remember should know of Andrew, and he's done some vocal plugins and, all kinds of stuff. And we've used some of his stuff on the music that I make as far as, plugins and things like that go. So what was it like to, work with these top producers?
Well, it was honestly, and it still is, a huge learning experience. Personally, I like to learn from everybody because we all may be in the same field, but everybody does things in ways that works for them. So, of course, Andrew Wade, he's a beast. He knows his craft. So just being around and seeing how he works helped me build that into my workflow a little bit. You know what I mean? So I like to take things from other people's workflow and build it into mine, and that's how I feel like I grow as an audio engineer. Um, and working with these people is different. It's for real. It's not your local band hanging out, not paying anything, just recording demos. It's big budget clients coming in to get stuff done, and you know time is money, so you got to be working. You got to stay on it. And same thing with Rodney Jerkins or like Pharrell or Timbaland. When we're in rooms with them, it's grind time. There's no messing around. So it's different for sure.
Yeah, and it's super cool, hearing like the insight of somebody that's been in the room with these people, because like a lot of people don't get to hear about the behind the scenes kind of stuff. And that's like my favorite thing is like hearing how producers and audio engineers and, people that started from the bottom, how they grew. And that's a huge reason I made this podcast, was so that I could, learn from other people and see how they learn and gain knowledge from them. So thank you for sharing your insights about, working with those producers. I think that it's super helpful. So what are some things that you learned from them as far as like production stuff goes?
Production wise, man, the biggest lesson that I've learned from especially somebody like Pharrell or Timbaland or Rodney is that when they have writer's block, they're humble enough to call somebody else in and collaborate. They don't have the ego to be like, oh, if I didn't write it, it's not happening. And that's something that I feel like a lot of young producers struggle with. And, the big guys, they're humble enough to realize it, and they respect the music enough to call somebody else for help. And I think that's how the big records are made.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Cardi B or Megan Thee Stallion, you look at the writers list on their music, and now we have to list the writers. Legally, like you have to list all of your writers. It's not just you anymore, like it was back in the '90s and
absolutely.
2000s. Like it's totally changed, and so it's cool to see, that people are collaborating more. And I think collaboration is the biggest way to grow. I just did a triple cover collab with 2 other female screamers, and we've seen exponential growth because of that, and it's like you have to be willing to put your pride aside, your ego aside, and ask for help or bring other people on to help you grow, because like at the end of the day, you've got to have people behind you. You've got to have a team with you. It's not just yourself.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's the same, for recording. I'm sure it's the same for film or graphic design. I mean, I've never done any of that stuff, but the concept is there that if you're willing to work hard and, be humble enough to ask for help of somebody that has been ahead of you, you're not going to get if you don't ask, you know what I'm saying? So I think that's the biggest lesson I've learned freelancing. So.
Absolutely. And can you talk a little bit about making yourself an asset? Like, I'm sure you did other things than just, audio engineering, or, what else did you do? Like when you were coming up, like, did you like clean the floors? Did you take the trash out? Like, what are some of the things you did to make yourself an asset at these studios?
Absolutely. So actually, at the Hit Factory, even though I had already engineered and worked with Rodney or whatever, when I first got here, I didn't start as an assistant engineer or freelance engineer. I still had to intern and then become a general assistant and then an assistant engineer. And, I just had to prove myself to the place because everybody wanted to work here. I cleaned the floors. I've been in sessions where literally you had the biggest artists you could think of, and I'm cleaning throw up in the control room, like I've had to do all that. And we have 7 rooms in the studio. So it's like I'm going back and forth, running around, taking food orders, doing this and that all day, every day. I literally lived in the studio. Like I just wouldn't leave unless they kicked me out. So, and I did that for about a whole year before I got the opportunity to move up. So yeah, you got to pay your dues.
Exactly. You got to pay your dues. That's what I was about to say. Like, it's so important, whether you are wanting to do audio engineering, whether you want to be a crew member on tour, whether you want to be a videographer for a production company, like you got to start from zero, and like my story is, similar. Like I moved from, so I grew up in the Middle East, studied school in Dubai, and then moved to Australia for a year, finished my film course in Australia, and then moved to California because like this is where, everybody came to make it. So why not give it a shot, So I came out here. I knew one band out here and I was like, all right, how am I going to get on tours? How am I going to be a videographer for bands? I decided to move down the street from a concert venue, and they would let me go in with my camera and take photos and meet bands and network and stuff. And that's how I built my business. I did it literally from zero, from the ground up. And I think a lot of people that are starting out freelancing think that it's going to be like a quick thing, but you have to realize that you're building a business, and to build a proper business, it takes 5 to 7 years to really grow it. So for you, while you were growing your freelancing side of things and working in the studios, did you also have any other quote unquote real jobs while you were trying to get your income to a level where freelancing and working at the studio paid your bills?
I did everything and anything that I could on the side to make some money. To be honest, since I was always trying to be in the studio, I didn't have like a full-time position, but I did like Uber and stuff like that on the times that I didn't get to be in the studio, So just enough to support myself. Like I kind of understood that I was going to be broke until I actually made it in. And that was a sacrifice that I had to make.
That's great. No, I think that it's super important to realize that. And I think it's good that you did take that sacrifice because, I mean, clearly you're doing some amazing stuff now. You've gotten to work with some absolutely top artists, top producers. And, I recently watched Timberland's masterclass actually. And just to see the process of the way he makes music is so fascinating. And it's so cool to be brought into that world even more.
Wow.
Which is like, like if you guys listening to this haven't seen his masterclass, you should just check it out. It's purely entertaining. Like it's completely entertaining and you learn so much, even if you're not like a producer or an audio engineer. Like even I learned things, from his masterclass just about like workflow and doing something from start to finish. And as a vocalist, like it helped me as well, So tell me about that internship a little bit more. What was it like to have an internship? Because a lot of people try to skip that step, but I think it's important.
The internship process is like, it's kind of like a hazing period, right? So basically, you're the new guy or girl, and nobody wants you there. Nobody wants to talk to you. You know, you kind of got to prove yourself. You know, and they only talk to you when they need you to clean, when they need something, this and that. You're a fly in the wall, and you know you do that enough. You just hustle, but like no matter what, if you work hard and you take care of what you're doing, people will notice that more than you trying to just be friendly with everybody at first. And that is something I definitely learned from the internship because a place like this one, the studio, it's a very cold-hearted place, you know, and they're trying to weed out everybody who's not willing to take that. So if you prove that you can take that, then people will warm up to you. Um, but if you don't, you know, the nature of the beast that is that it'll weed you out, and everybody who's made it up has been through that process, so they understand what you're going through, but they also understand that you need to go through it. So that's kind of the main thing about the internship. Everything else is just, you know, regular duties that you should expect, you know, doing food runs, um, making sure that if any assistants, which I am now, need anything for their sessions, that you make sure you take care of that. Make sure all the rooms are restocked before any clients show up in the room. Make sure everything's clean. You know, basically, you want to make the place like a five-star hotel. You know, you want to be a server to anybody and everybody, but always realize that you're doing that so you can get to a better position and you can learn and you can grow. And that's something that I feel like a lot of people lose sight of when they're interning because it is hard, it's not easy, but they lose sight of the fact that they're doing that because they're trying to become better for themselves. And if you never lose sight of that, an internship is not going to bother you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And what was it like to go from intern to assistant and to where you are now? What was that move like for you? Like, how did your priorities and your job change?
Well, it was a whole process too because you know I didn't just become a full time assistant. Like around my 6 to 7 month mark of interning slash being a general assistant, they started throwing me on the rooms for sessions. So I would go ahead, take care of the session, and after the session's done, I would go back to being an intern for the day. You know, so it's like they'll throw me a bone and then put you right back where you are. So it's kind of like it kills your ego after a while. Like it just it shapes you in a way. But you know, after doing that long enough and getting pissed off at yourself for dealing with it, after so long, it just doesn't bother you anymore, and you realize that you're just doing a service. And you know, once you get to the point where you wanted, you realize that now you have new goals and you want to get somewhere else. So you got to still work just as hard. Um, you know, now that I'm an assistant, I still have a lot of duties. You know, before my session gets here, I'm at the studio 1 hour early. I'm making sure all the gear is plugged up. I test everything. Um, and I make sure the room looks neat. You know, I always try to be extra. Like I'll put the lighting in the room to make like a vibe. You know, I'll try to bring snacks if I know certain people like certain stuff. Like I'll have it in the room and they'll be stuck when they come to the studio. You know, the studio is a place where people want to make music, especially for bigger artists. This place is a safe haven. So they want to be comfortable. They don't want to be thinking about, oh, there's somebody outside that wants to talk to me. There's somebody in the room that's not supposed to be here. No, I want to make this place as comfortable as possible for anybody to be able to make a good record. And that's kind of what my duties is now as an assistant.
And it's so important. I mean, like, you know, setting the vibe when you go to a studio, when you like step into a studio as an artist myself, you know, like getting in that right mindset, it really does have a lot to do with the mood of the room and the vibe of the room. So like to have somebody that takes such care and, you know, you have such a passion for what you're doing, I think that going above and beyond is so important. And like, as an artist, like I respect and appreciate that so much. Like,
Yeah.
to it's almost like going home. You know what I mean? Like you want it to feel like you're going home to like your safe place. So I totally
Absolutely.
get what you're saying.
Absolutely. And also, one of the biggest things that I've learned, that I think could be applied to anybody is, when you're in a room with somebody who you don't know, especially like a client, you just be a fly in the wall for 10 minutes and observe body language. If they're open to have conversations, then have them. But then if you see that somebody just doesn't want to be bothered, don't bother them, and that will get you further along in making connections than just, you know, pressing yourself onto any client or anybody that you meet, and I do believe that your network is your net worth. So, you know, just a little tip.
Yeah. And so how do you find your freelancing clients? Like is it word of mouth, social media? Like what is your like key way of finding clients?
It used to be word of mouth. I mean, I guess it still kind of is. Now I'm at a point that I'm meeting people every day at this studio that I get calls from people here to go other places or to book here again, you know? So it's been kind of like a domino effect. So at this point, I'm not longer necessarily looking, which is a good thing for me. But there is dry seasons. When COVID hit, we were super busy, and then out of nowhere, it was a ghost town. So we didn't know what to do then. We're supposed to make records, and if there's no clientele, how do we make a living? You know, so
So how did you guys overcome that? Like during COVID, like what did you do for money for the studio? Like how did you guys continue to adapt to the changing of the world? Really, I mean, like for me as a freelancer, I pivoted from videography to video editing, and I also did voiceover work, and I did as much as I could do from my home. So what did you guys do? Because for like a studio, people have to come to you. So like how did you guys survive that?
yeah, and especially a studio like ours where our clients fly to come here, so it's like they're coming from all over the world.
Right.
We had to restrict that, you know, um, because we didn't want our staff to get sick. And not only did we get hit with COVID, we got flooded and we lost a couple rooms. So it's like it was a very hard time for the studio. Personally, I have my own home studio as well, and I reached out to the contacts that I have online, and if anybody needed mixing, and I just mixed. Mixing got me over the rough time, um, and then even though I wasn't getting paid, I would still come in and I would try to help the studio rebuild because even though it is my job, this place is also like my second home. So I just worked as hard in getting in construction and doing whatever I could to help get this place back in shape. And thankfully, not only me but a lot of the staff came and did that, and we got the place back and running. And now we got records again.
It's crazy to hear, how everything kind of hit you guys at once, flooding and COVID and, all that stuff. But I mean, to see your staff come together, your family, if you will, come together like that, like I think that's huge and very it speaks volumes about the teamwork and the companionship you guys have at that studio. I think that's amazing that you sacrificed your time and efforts to go give back to the studio, and I'm sure that the owners appreciated that more than anything.
Absolutely. The president of the studio, even him, he was doing construction just like everybody. So it was we had to get the place back and running.
Absolutely. And so because of COVID, because you guys didn't have anybody coming out, like maybe that was the best time for that to happen, even though it's a horrible thing that happened, but it was like the best time for it to happen. You know what I mean?
In a way, it was the best time,
Yeah.
so we could prepare for the clientele who was going to come in later. Correct? Yeah.
Exactly. So can you talk about some of the artists you've gotten to work with?
Sure. I mean, I got a list. Hold on. Out of the top of my head, I work with like rap artists like Lil Pump. Megan Thee Stallion just did her whole record here. Um, let's see. One of the big ones, I got to be in a session with Justin Bieber. Um, I mean, Pharrell was here with us for 4 months. Timbaland was here for, he's here a lot. Um, we had Mark Anthony last night. Um, well, we're doing a lot of the Latin guys right now. Like, I don't know if you know much about their scene, but like artists like Anuel, Bad Bunny, Daddy Yankee, we're taking care of all of them right now. Like, we're flooded with them. Um, yeah, just anybody and everybody. To be honest, it's kind of like waves. Like right now, we're having a big Latin wave. Right before COVID hit, we were doing the whole thing with Pharrell. Months before that, we had a big wave of like rappers. So we had like Gucci Man here. We had we just had a lot of people. You know, it's something new every day. You know, I walked out of the bathroom one time into the hallway and I saw Alicia Keys. Like that is just
What?
the normal day in life here at Criteria.
Wow. Wow, man, that's so cool. Like, do you realize how big of a deal this is? Like, do you ever like sit back and be like, "Damn, this is fucking awesome."
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a goal of mine. Like I wanted to work with the majors, so that's why one of the reasons why I picked the studio. So I did my research. I was like, okay, the artists that I want to work with, where are they going? And they were going to this studio. So I applied to this place, you know, and that was just kind of the process. And overall, working with all these people, you know, you end up working on some big records, and then your name starts to get out there, and that's kind of my path right now. You know, I'm still trying to figure out my career, even though I do work with these people. You know.
Right. Like, what's next? Like, where do you want to go? Like, where do you want to go from here? What are your future goals? Like, I know you said that one of your goals was to work with the majors, and you're doing that now. So, like,
Yeah.
have you made new goals?
Right. So now that I'm at this place, my new goal is to leave this place. Right. And that may sound weird, but this place, it was kind of like a stepping stone. Right. So I got to the studio. I learned the studio. I got the skills that I needed to become a great engineer here. Now I gotta work my butt off um, with this artist. So hopefully one of them maybe says, "Hey, you know what? I need a personal engineer." So, for example, let's say Ariana Grande likes my engineering, and she offers me becoming her personal engineer and takes me away from this place. That's kind of like my goal, like somebody like that to pick me up.
Wow. That would be massive, man. And so tell me a little bit more about like what a personal engineer does.
Well, you know, a lot of artists are very intimate with their vocals. You know, a lot of artists don't care as well. They record with any engineer, but once they find that engineer that can just get them sounding the best that they ever heard themselves, it's over. Like, and then also somebody who is reliable, who is on time, who realistically, that if they wake up at 6 in the morning, they call you and you could come in, you'll be that guy. You know, one of my mentors, he was T Pain's personal engineer for 10 years. And that's what he did. He moved to Atlanta for him, and 24/7 he was on T Pain's clock, you know? So that was kind of his gig.
Damn, that's amazing, man. And then like to dedicate yourself that much to like a single artist is huge, you know, to be a part of their process. So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about your process. Like what do you do when you get an artist in the studio? Like from start to finish, like what is your go-to?
Well, before we even get to the studio, I do like to have a conversation with them. Like, what do you want to get done? You know what I mean? Like, are you trying to produce a project? Are you trying to just record? Are you trying to mix? Um, Also, what is their experience in the studio? You know, we are a studio that a lot of experienced people come, but you know, some people this could be their first experience in the studio. They may be nervous in front of a mic. You know, so I just like to get an idea of where their head's at, and that way I can ass- assist make the record the best way it can be. You know, sometimes as an engineer, there's not a producer involved, so I also have to coach certain artists vocally so they can get the best performance. And you know, there's a lot of engineers that don't care and they'll just press recording. Will never do that, but I believe that it's a collaborative process no matter what, so that you can get the best music made. You know, to me, it doesn't matter how tired I am. It doesn't matter what mood I'm in or the artist is in. At the end of the day, I've learned that we have to respect the music, because if you don't respect the music, it ain't gonna be good. So
You're right. And as a vocalist myself, like if I didn't have audio engineers like help me, like I would not be singing, first of all. Because like I've learned so much from engineers and producers that I would take years more to like figure out on my own. So like we said it earlier, like collaborating and working with other people is like pivotal to making it, if you will.
absolutely, absolutely. Um, yeah, and you know, anybody who wants to get into this career, uh, you know, if they ever have any questions, they can absolutely reach out to me. You know, I would love to help anybody. You know.
Awesome. And my last question for you is, what is something you know now that you wish you knew when you started?
That is a great question. What is something I knew now? I wish I knew how much work I was gonna have to put in, you know, because I just kind of blindly threw myself out there. Um, but it was the best choice to just keep working, because no matter what, I think I'm gonna have to work hard for years. So it just kind of prepared me for that. But yeah, I think that applies to anything. You know, if you really want to do something, you got to go full force with it. You know, you can't be halfway in, halfway out. You got to be all in the water. So
Absolutely. And if people want to follow what you're doing, reach out to you with any questions, maybe to pick your brain some more, where can they find you?
my Instagram is at Daniel Escobar. You can reach out, just DM me there. I post a lot about what I do in the studio and stuff like that. So just reach out there and we can talk.
So if you've ever wanted to get into producing, audio engineering, mixing, any of that kind of stuff, I hope this podcast helped you figure out that, you know, you got to grind. You got to keep up the grind. Even if you become successful, you got to keep grinding away and keep your dominoes dropping. Like Daniel said in this episode, keep those dominoes going. If you enjoyed this, please leave a rating and feedback. I would truly appreciate it. If you do leave a rating and feedback, I will actually send you a signed photo print from an abandoned place that I have explored. I love sending out these photo prints. It is my way of giving back to you guys for doing something so simple as giving feedback. I appreciate you. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Liquid Death, for partnering with me. And I will talk to you guys next week on another episode of Project Freelance. Also, if you didn't know, I have a second podcast called No Tracers, which is about exploring abandoned places. It's also a guest-based podcast, so if you guys want to hear some crazy stories, definitely check that out. All right, guys, I'll talk to you next Monday on another episode of Project Freelance. Again, my name is Kay Anagonio. Stay strong, keep enduring, go out, and go create something.